002 Neotropical Arboreal / NOdice (parentheses, life counters). Svetlana peered into the tiny cave of her hand and admired the geometry of the dice, one of which was supposedly glow-in-the-dark, but their tiny, crank-powered camping light had never been enough to charge it. Across the clearing, darkness. Vic studied his cards, glanced up at her slightly worried, but knowing also that he needn't be, ever. But, nevertheless, the silence of her state was becoming unnerving. Sometimes the quiet was too loud there in the treehouse. Something that bugged him, but not her, ever. Steamed by her own breath, Svetlana's eyeballs became salty bodies in the heat, rising up warm and familiar from the sliver of free space between her face and the mandatory head wrap. Annoying, Svetlana thought, but, once again, so glad she didn't wear glasses in this little, everlasting sauna. Others had it worse. Squinting through the darkness of another farty, uneventful session, which consisted of playing cards, all the while focusing eyes and ears like spy satellites towards the near-distant vegetation, the deep, dark outside, since they had no real light, was the same as it ever was, still, misunderstood, undefined, and steadily, reliably threatening, and that was pretty much all there was to see from their treehouse's only window. Once the flaky sun went away instead of set, every day her golden eyes strained to see any evidence of the motion she definitely heard. Something out there this time. And to a rookie, that small something might have been also indecipherable from the regular, snappy, creaky, twiggy noises of someone, besides her sole in-house human companion, getting up to pee off the gangplank balcony in the middle of the night. Yes, that, or the other likely outlier, an auditory hallucination regularly triggered by the hefty, intoxicating pollen in the air. Nevertheless, and because of all this, she could have and would have and should have overlooked the small body embedded in the moss out on the bounds of their clearing down below. No positive visual on the target. Their objective was to catch and care for anyone who showed up, and that's all there was to it. Act natural, don't panic, and be here now, already somehow on the verge of inevitability, causing what A would love to deem a political incident in a few hours. But what could you do? A defense they could certainly push for later was in their favor, given the inevitable rounds of inquiry for dereliction of duty. It happened again? No. That tiny figure was, of course, not visible without a spotlight, which we, of course, do not have. But how did you miss the rambunctious companion next to it swatting at the brush cave? Imaginary critique, of course, but feeling based on precedent, unavoidable in their near future. The system, the only system they had in the clearing, was to catch bodies as they woke up, day or night, and nurse them back to health after whatever it was that went on down there, whatever process they had all been through. Breathing in the tacky limbo between pissing off the local wildlife or tripping over the crunchy labyrinth of their homegrown, micromanaged bureaucracy, Svetlana, she squeezed the heck out of her fists, tightening them around the small, spin-down life counters in each of her hands. As of late, she needed as many outlets for feeling as she could get, no matter how simple, to trigger something even something as simple as a balanced pressure sensation. Her balled-up hands encased one of each of the two 20-sided dice, one in each palm, their certain geometry leaving uncertain impressions. Even something that basic was reassuring. The simple, self-contained nature of such an object was a welcome comfort. And just to quiz balls in the dark at the numbers was a break, a tiny pause, allowing time to dissipate while the sound of the world absorbed softly, almost thoughtfully, within the plush disorder of their minimal quarters, whose main amenities were a singular, wonky writing desk, a crank-powered light, and a three-toed sloth expertly nestled in a platypus down blanket, and a cranky, rule-abiding flatmate, the only one available. The only other light at night was the sometimes moon, always bobbing as if it were reflecting in a puddle, and sometimes poking through the dense tree cover far above to confuse them all. The lowly forest floor and treehouse dwellers below, not knowing or caring that they had so few markers and anchors for telling time or seeing anything in the many, many hours of daily nightly dark. Leaning forward, Svetlana bent over the tabletop, whose lashings wheezed under her weight. Looking towards the shaky moonlight beaming down through the dense tree cover above, she realized it wasn't actually impossible to tell how long it had been, 630 days or 36,000 years. They could have tried to track the wobbly moon, but time itself had become blank, and they had very little to fill it in with, except the chill, smoothly cool zen of mundanity, watching, waiting, planning, everyone nodding, forgetting. Watch duties, sometimes a job, were actually a huge life highlight somehow, despite the tedium, even if the night seemed to go on way extra long, meandering through vacant forevers. S&Vs, eagle eyes, and ears were aptly craned, able and trained, except when they weren't, on the yonster maw, a deep, dark, cavernous void framed by heavy metal across the clearing, an embedded vessel they'd all allegedly crawled out of like amnesiacs of some kind of spaceship wreck. Survivors, all dehydrated, long-haired. Of course, no one really remembers what the heck happened, Svea liked to emphasize with added absurdity, while pretending to dry heave her barf noises out. She knew Vikingor loved that. But, drawing a blank, really, yep, before, he'd always added, no one had fought to coin that term before, as it was simple and stupid and referred to often, and if anyone wrote, as if there were any abundance of reason or pens or paper or anything to make any note of any sort of history with a capital H. Here, as it evaporated into happy fact, and here we were again, ever again. Now, Vic's incessant insistence on some sort of tradition of Friday night magic. They didn't even know what day it is, and furthermore, Vic, every night is magic. Her half-smile lost to history with a capital H, buried deep under her face scarves, had her own ongoing imaginary conversation, his, but her eyes compensated for all. And maybe, even maybe, Every night is Friday too. Sure, why not? Everything and nothing, and that was fine. Did you ever feel like, until just now, the featured attractions of the world were just weird? Vic asked, waving his hands slowly like magic. It struck him in real time that he had interpreted her word as a prompt for engagement. It was not. A possible question as answer, at best. It means a whole lot of nothing to me between the world and however you want to put it. Svetlana cast in a far-off cadence, neither in response or not. Don't know about you, but I find this here little slothy friend awful inspiring, she said, with deep sincerity. The little animal chin currently rested on her knee. You looking at my cards? She murmured in a mild gangster-style accusation, pretendedly to be mildly offended, as it raised its smiling eyes. The sloth didn't need a face scarf. Lucky duck. Lucky, but